All right, then let's head over to South Africa. The rand slightly edged up against the American dollar on Friday in the wake of a bit of optimism that the African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance would eventually reach an agreement over how to share cabinet posts. Now, remember, this is coming a day after local media reported a major disagreement between the parties on Thursday. At 0940 GMT, the rand was trading at 18.2150 to the US dollar, roughly 1.4% stronger than its previous close. The currency fell sharply on Thursday after local media reports indicated that a deal between the two parties, the largest in the unity government, was in jeopardy. Financial markets also at edge over the composition of the cabinet, as it will give an early indication of exactly how the ANC does intend to share power in this government of national unity. Let's bring in Sanusha Naidu. She's a political analyst at the Institute of Global Dialogue. She's joining us now live on the program. Sanusha, good to have you on the program tonight. So we've seen these reports pretty much across South African media, right? Thursday had a bit of a deadlock, which was triggered because apparently the president altered the terms of the inter-parties agreement and pulled an offer to give the DA the trade and industry portfolio. What more do you know about what happened?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. I think we got to contextualize this a little bit. I mean, looking at the latest closure of the rand, at where it stopped trading against the US dollar, it's around about 18.18 to the US dollar. So for every one USD, we get 18.18 rand. I think that has fundamentally shown that from yesterday, when it closed at 18.46 to the US dollar, today it's kind of substantially come down. And I think this is a very important point to make to viewers, that the market is not the only indicator of what's happening in terms of the dynamics around this negotiation with regard to the composition of the cabinet. What is really important here is what we're getting in terms of sentiment from the market itself, not just on the currency, because the currency does not really give you an important reflection of what's happening. If you listen to some of the market analysts that are talking about the fact that they heard this morning from the ANC Secretary General saying that the negotiations are going on, that nobody has pulled out from the negotiations, and equally from the DA. I think the DA, as the Democratic Alliance, one of the core actors in terms of the GNU, with just under 22% of the vote, has also indicated that they just can't walk away. So this issue about the trade and industry portfolio, I actually think is something that we need to look at in the context of the fact that it may be just one portfolio, but it doesn't necessarily talk about the broader context and the broader purview of what's going to be policy making. And this seems to be missed in the analysis around what's happening, that the market is one actor, but the market also gets very fickle. It will self-correct. I was listening to your insert now about how the IMF has been muted about what's happening in Kenya. But that's partly because the economic austerity that you're having from international investors is very, very debilitating on structural economic transformation issues. And right now in South Africa, yes, we have to think about what this does to our economy, but it's not going to basically collapse the economy. People are still going around their everyday business.
Indeed. And to your point, this is a tweet about 10 hours ago from the ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula. Good morning, South Africa. Almost done with the GNU discussions. In the best interest of all South Africans, it will be done as promised. Going down to your point, though, about where we essentially take the economy in terms of structural transformation, from the ANC's perspective, why is it critical for the party to control the trade and industry portfolio, and what would the DA do differently in that post compared to how the ANC's run it in the last 3 decades?
Well, I think you've got to be careful in the understanding of what structural economic transformation means. It does mean, in order to create an inclusive economy, you create an economy that enables for people to have the ability to exercise their asset ownership rights. And more importantly, your point about whether the ANC has not done what it's supposed to do in terms of the economy, and that the DA may do something differently in the impression that is created. I think you've got to come back to the broader context of the economic cluster that exists within South Africa. The economic cluster is not just the trade and industry. Yes, there are a number of agencies around the kind of trade strategy that will lead to industrialization, that will then promote the economic growth trajectory. And that's what the big story is here, is how do we build the growth? How do we develop the growth trajectory for us to address the poverty, the inequality, and the unemployment crisis that we have. But it doesn't mean that if you change portfolios, you're going to do that overnight. It has to work in synchronization with the other economic clusters, dealing with the Department of Finance, dealing with your procurement, dealing with your infrastructure bill, which is actually Operation Velindela, which is part of the President's economic reform program, and the question of the transport logistics and all of that. It has to deal also with the fact that you have your SOEs. Right now, we're sitting on a 3-month high that we haven't had electricity load shedding. This is before the election, and this is the 3-month a period that marks the fact that there's been no electricity blackout. That is critical to small business. So if you're actually thinking about only the trade and industry portfolio, and if that is what you're thinking is going to be important for the economy, then we're missing the issue that the economic policy making consists of a number of different portfolios that need to be synchronized and work together.